Wish TV. All Indiana Politics
is your premier source for Indiana politics.
Focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I want to jump right in today. The General Assembly has gone home after passing a new two-year state budget. The vote was something we haven't seen in a very long time. Bipartisan, only 5 of 150 state legislators voted against the budget. It includes major boosts in spending based on an improved revenue forecast and stimulus money from the federal government.
I think that we are living in a rare time and place and space, and we're going to seize the day, and you're going to see that reflected in this budget. This budget truly is transformational. It's transformational when it comes to investments we're going to make in people first and foremost, obviously our state's greatest asset. It's going to allow people not just to have more hope than ever, but it's going to help them realize new opportunities in their lives.
I think the word that people ask, I think it's certainly an unprecedented session from COVID to just felt like a lot of ups and downs and changes within the session. Obviously, right when you think you know what's going on, you get a revenue forecast. It changes a lot of things. So adaptability was the key, and we were, I think, able to adapt successfully.
Anytime we craft a budget, you're going to leave a number of needs on the table that you can't get to. And so all of a sudden, while there is some significant and real challenge to trying to find out how to appropriate another $2.4 billion, these folks have been they know that our budget and the needs of the state very well. And so you can, as you start to think about, okay, let's add some priorities, it comes together relatively quickly.
I would just say that, Senator Bray, Governor Holcomb, and I have talked all session about teacher pay. And again, not understanding or knowing exactly what the revenue forecast would be, but we all were well versed in the teacher compensation report. Matter of fact, the first thing on that Thursday, on the Wednesday, when I got a little heads up on what the revenue forecast would say, went out, printed, and found 30, 31, and 32 on those recommendations and highlighted them because I knew they were there and I wanted to get specific numbers. So, they never left our mind. One thing I probably would note is that there are important recommendations that report about what local school districts can do. And I think it's important that they do those things. To find and capture cost savings that can again be redirected to the classroom.
We're all committed to good education, which comes in various forms, and we wanted to make sure that traditional or public education was appropriately funded at the appropriate level. We believe it is. We also believe that parents should have options and choices, and we funded that at what we believe is a reasonable level.
A lot of Democrats had praised the American Rescue Plan when they were talking about the budget today. How much did that play a role in your guys' ability to craft the budget that you did?
Look, we were able to make one-time investments through that money. I think, the idea around it impacting teacher pay and those types of things, the flexibility that came through the revenue forecast was really critical to that discussion. But the Rescue Act did allow us to make strategic investments in things that were one time, such as the readiness grants, such as some infrastructure projects, both water and road. So those, what we really tried to maximize in this was to figure out what the right one-time investments were that gave us short-term, really significant short-term impact, but gave us long-term flexibility.
Pleased to have a chance to help wind the session down with a conversation with State Senator Eddie Melton. Senator, thanks for being with us on a morning we're already reflecting on what happened, what did not happen during the session. Education was such an overriding issue. I guess let's start then with, perhaps appropriately, a grade. How do you grade the work that the lawmakers did this year?
Well, I think when we look at overall the state budget, when we talk about specifically education, I think we've done fairly well. There are some extreme concerns, especially with the expansion of our vouchers that has been added into the state budget. However, myself and our Senate Democratic Caucus, we fought extremely hard to ensure that new dollars, we proposed over $600 million new dollars through our K through 12. And after a lot of negotiation and conversations, you see we have over $1 billion in our K through 12 system. So I would say overall, we've done fairly well. I'll probably give us a B minus at this point in time. But I think it's a great day for our teachers as we look to get them pay increase, starting increasing that base salary of $40,000.
Help us understand sort of the late-breaking developments in that allowed that to happen. Revenue forecast changes. Was it a difficult negotiation to get that dollar amount up, or did both sides seem eager to bump it up if they could?
At the end of the day, we have to thank the Biden administration. If it wasn't for the federal stimulus dollars that came through the state of Indiana and across the entire nation, I don't know where we will be as a state and what we've been able to fund to support this particular budget cycle. With the hundreds of millions of dollars have come through for education on a local and state level, and the hundreds of millions of dollars for infrastructure for a state and local level. And the stimulus checks that came to individuals in the amount of $1,400. All of that played a significant role in terms of increasing our state revenue, in terms of income tax, sales tax, and local corporations tax. So if it wasn't for these Biden stimulus plan, the American Rescue Plan, I don't know what we would have done.
Any negotiation session, and the budget session is certainly that, comes out with people feeling a little bruised on both sides, or the negotiation presumably hasn't gone too well. Let's talk about a couple of things that I think many presumed that the Republicans would be able to get done and did not end up happening. For instance, changes to gun laws in Indiana, specifically the permitting requirements. How did that not happen from your perspective, and are you surprised it didn't?
Well, I believe the Senate wasn't prepared to make that large of a leap in terms of what was being proposed in the House. The Senate Democratic Caucus was extremely against that proposition, and we hope that it continues to be the case as we move forward into the upcoming sessions in the future. So hopefully we have constituents and stakeholders across the state that voice their opposition in legislation such as that.
Obviously, you represent northwestern Indiana. The region wasn't necessarily specifically mentioned in the Indigo issue. That I know you're acutely aware of it, though, with Gary and others being something that down the line could see similar questions. Were you surprised the Indigo issue did not go as the other side of the aisle had hoped?
Well, I just want to say I want to thank all of my Indy colleagues that fought against that, and all of the advocates that fought against that. The Indiana Black Legislative Caucus held several town halls over the course of session to help folks advocate against legislation that was going to impact everyday Hoosiers and our most vulnerable that needed access to the doctor, access to the grocery store, and so much more. So yes, public transportation was under assault, and I'm extremely happy that we were able to fend that off.
Lawmakers are set to come back later for a special session on redistricting. It is hardly new information that Democrats are very much in the minority on both sides. As you look toward that session, how do you approach it? What are your concerns?
Well, as we wait on the Census Bureau to release this data, we're still at work listening to Hoosiers across the state, wanting to know what they want to see in their redistricting reform that takes place. We've been fighting for years to have an independent redistricting commission, and that has yet to take place in the state of Indiana, having a nonpartisan body to help draw the maps. Again, we're going to have a party that is in control. They have the governor's office, the Secretary of State's office, the treasurer, the auditor, majority in the House, majority in the Senate. They will be drawing the maps again. the engagement of the public is extremely important in this process to point out and identify redistricting as something that has pretty much tied the hands of other legislators. We as Democrats, we represent Hoosiers as well. Our voices need to be heard to represent our constituents. And we bring forth policy that represents the best interests of every Hoosier. So as we come to the close of this session, figuratively, but when we move towards the October, November timeframe of drawing these maps, we need folks all hands on deck. And we're going to do all that we can to make sure there's a fair maps are drawn.
State Senator Eddie Melton, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we talk vaccines and COVID-19 on this Sunday. The White House says it has reached its goal of 200 million vaccine doses during the first 100 days of the Biden presidency. But the celebration comes during the pause of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Health authorities stopped the use of that particular vaccine after 6 reports of severe blood clots in women, including 1 death. This week, I talked about that with the new U.S. Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy.
What it is evidence of is the safety system working, even though some people might look at that number and say, hey, it's a really small number. You want your safety system to be looking at even small signals and investigating them thoroughly. But ultimately, I don't think this pause is going to prevent us from achieving our ultimate goal, which is to get everyone vaccinated. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, the vast majority of people getting vaccinated in the country right now are getting vaccinated with the Moderna or Pfizer vaccines. And that is still going to continue to be the case. We will have enough Pfizer and Moderna to vaccinate every adult in America. That much is clear. But the second thing that's really important for people to recognize is that this pause involved the J&J vaccine, and the other 2, Pfizer and Moderna, are very different vaccines. They're built using a different platform altogether. And despite over 200 million doses of those vaccines being given, we still actually have a very strong safety profile based on all the data we've collected, and they still appear to be highly effective. So that's why, again, it's so important for people to get vaccinated, to know the facts, and to recognize that we will continue to prioritize safety to ensure that everyone has access to both safe and effective vaccines.
Are you concerned that maybe there were some people out there who saw that news come out, even though it's a small percentage, and maybe they were the ones who were on the fence, and maybe now that they're saying to themselves, see, I knew it, see, I couldn't trust this? Or is there a concern from the White House that this will hurt those efforts to get them vaccinated?
Well, look, certainly after the news of the pause came out, I absolutely understand that for some people, they may have heard that and it may have been unsettling, and they may have been worried and may have increased some of their concerns. And I get that. That's understandable. But that's why it's so important for us to get out there and to be open and transparent with people about why this pause happened and what the facts are. And very importantly, to complete the investigation. Whatever recommendations come out will be the result of a very thoughtful, thorough analysis. We'll be transparent about what was found. And we'll make sure, again, regardless of what happened to the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, that people have safe vaccines for them. And they already have that today in the Pfizer and Moderna options.
And you can see my full interview with the Surgeon General during a special Wish TV Vaccine Central Town Hall. That's Thursday at 6 o'clock right here on Wish TV. And welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in 2 of our favorite people, Republican Jennifer Hallwell and Democrat Kip Tu. Good to see you both. Let's start with the state budget here. Jennifer, I want to come to you first. Would you call this a victory for Republicans?
I call it a victory for Hoosiers. I mean, I really think almost everyone wins in this budget. Governor Holcomb called it transformational, and it really is. You've got an increase of almost $2 billion going into education, including $600 million of which can be used to increase teacher salaries. You've got $500 million in new regional economic development grants that can go to help attract talent and businesses to regions all across the state. We're paying down $1 billion in debt, $600 million of which is in the teachers' retirement fund. All kinds of things, increases in mental health funding and several programs. And so, I mean, it really is going to have an incredible impact over the next couple of years on the state of Indiana. And, you know, I think case in point in terms of it being a victory is seeing the votes. In the House, it was 96-2, and then in the Senate, it was 46-3. You know, that's unheard of. And so, I mean, it truly is a bipartisan budget that I think everyone wins.
Kip, to those points, this final budget had a lot of Democratic support. Does it live up to the promises, specifically when it comes to teacher pay raises?
It does, and I think that's why it had Democratic support. We haven't had a bipartisan budget since Joe Kernan left office, basically, in the state of Indiana. Well, I take that back. We did have one in, I think, 2009, but this one had, unprecedented support. And I think there's a bunch of factors or confluences that caused that to happen. One, the governor worked with both sides of the aisle, and there was talk on both sides of the aisle. It really is extraordinary, considering how vitriolic and divided our country is, that in the state of Indiana this year, even though we had a lot of rancor in the session this year, that they came together in the end and voted overwhelmingly for this budget. And I think it speaks to leadership on all sides in the state of Indiana, and it also, I think, it speaks to the leadership in the federal sphere. President Biden has changed the tone in Washington, and hopefully it's going to change the tone all over the country. But it certainly contributed here, both the money and I think the attitude, which is let's try to get something done for people. And there were a lot of Democratic wish list items that made the budget. Republicans listened and they included their ideas, and there was money to do it. And so it got done. You talk about winners and losers. I guess I'll say this with respect to that. I would have liked to have seen money for capital projects for higher ed. I think we have an advantage over almost every other state with our fine universities, and for us to not continue with that momentum, to me, is a disappointment, especially when the price of money is so low. And I'll criticize vouchers. I think those of us who stand for the separation of church and state don't like to see public money going to institutions that teach religion. But on the whole, teachers finally got the raise they deserve. We're back to 2012 for teachers, and that's a very, very good thing, and happy that it got those votes and got that money.
Do you credit, Kip, Indiana's success for this budget, or is it the American Rescue Plan?
Well, we could. If Indiana was in terrible shape, it couldn't be done. So you can't make the argument that it was all the federal rescue plan. Indiana. I think that I would say that the governor and Republicans have historically been a little bit too stingy, but that stinginess did allow for them to spend this year. So you have to give them credit that there was money from the state as well as the feds to put this budget together.
Jennifer, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it definitely is both. Certainly there's an influx in federal money that is being used for a lot of these one-time expenses, infrastructure, capital, debt, et cetera. But it's also because of Indiana's strong fiscal position, because of Republican leadership over the last several years, that we are able to weather this storm, and our economy is roaring back. In the final days is when we found out that the revenue forecast puts us at an additional $2 billion, which is what provided the flexibility to make all of these investments at the end. And so that would not be the case if Indiana hadn't been such a strong fiscal steward for so many years, that we were able to do things and not use the federal money to, buy off debt and problems that we had. So I definitely think it's both.
That's fair. I have about 30 seconds left. I just want to get a quick response from both of you. This bipartisanship that we saw here, do you think that's going to continue? Kip?
It remains to be seen. I'm actually hopeful for the first time in a long time that the temperature has been turned down. We still have the carnival barkers out there, and I hope that middle America starts to ignore them.
Yeah. Jennifer?
Well, I certainly hope so. And I hope that teachers and the folks who've been advocating for teachers for the last couple of years will recognize where we are and, kind of meet the moment. So my Facebook feed has been full of negativity from teachers and education advocates for a couple of years. And I'd love to start to see them congratulate and be thankful for the funding that was made.
Right. We'll leave it there. We're running out of time. Sorry about that. Jennifer Hallwell, Kip 2, always good to see you. Thank you. We'll be right back. And thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics on this Sunday. We'll be back here next Sunday at 9:30. Have a great weekend.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.